Welcome back to your weekly Canadian astrology forecast for May 11th to the 17th, 2026. My name's Adeana. I'm an intuitive astrologer. This week is a pivotal week in Canada's astrological landscape because we are moving through a concentrated buildup of Taurus energy before shifting suddenly into Gemini. And what this tells us right away is that the week begins with a strong focus on stability, finances, and material reality, but very quickly pivots into fast-moving conversations, news, and public reaction. We're working with 3 major transits this week. On May 14th, we have Mercury forming a Cazimi in Taurus, bringing a moment of clarity and important messaging. On May 16th, we have the new moon in Taurus, marking the beginning of a new financial and economic cycle for Canada. And then on May 17th, Mercury enters Gemini and immediately conjoins Uranus, triggering rapid developments, surprising announcements, and intensified public discourse. So this is a week where something becomes clear, something new begins, and then everything starts moving very quickly. When we map these transits onto Canada's natal chart using the whole sign house system, Taurus activates the second house. This is the house of national wealth, currency, resources, cost of living, and economic stability. It also reflects public confidence, how secure Canadians feel in their day-to-day lives. So right away, the focus of this week is unmistakable. Finances, affordability, housing, food costs, and the overall economic direction of the country. But this week is not happening in a vacuum. It's unfolding against a backdrop of rising political tension across Canada. There is a growing sense of dissatisfaction among many Canadians, particularly tied to economic pressure, housing affordability, inflation, and the overall cost of living. And increasingly, that frustration is being directed toward federal leadership, including the Liberal Party of Canada and Prime Minister Mark Carney. Astrologically, this lines up very clearly, because when the second house is activated this strongly, people are not focused on abstract ideals. They are focused on survival, stability, and sustainability. They are asking very real questions. Can I afford my life? Is this sustainable long term? What is actually changing? And when those questions remain unresolved, pressure builds, not just economically, but politically. As we move through the week, we then shift into Gemini energy, activating Canada's third house of communication, media, transportation, and public discourse. So the flow becomes very clear. Financial reality comes into focus, and new cycles begin, and then the conversation explodes. Let's start with May 14th, the Mercury Cazimi in Taurus. This is a moment where Mercury, the planet of communication, aligns directly with the sun, bringing clarity, insight, and concentrated messaging. In Canada's second house, this strongly points to financial information becoming clear. We could see government communication around economic policy, updates on interest rates, housing strategies, or cost of living measures. It can also show the release of data employment numbers, inflation reports, or fiscal updates that shape public understanding. But this is where things get important. Mercury doesn't just represent what is said, it represents how it is interpreted. So even if leadership is attempting to communicate stability or reassurance, the public response may be very telling. This could look like increased criticism, stronger public reactions, or more vocal calls for change, especially if Canadians feel that their lived experience is not matching the message being delivered. This is a moment where the narrative becomes clear, but not necessarily agreed upon. From a navigation standpoint, this is a time to listen carefully. What is being said midweek matters. It sets the tone for what follows. Now we move to May 16th, the new moon in Taurus. This is one of the most important moments of the week. New moons represent beginnings, and in Canada's second house, this is the start of a new financial cycle. This can coincide with new economic policies, budgetary direction, or a renewed focus on key national issues like housing affordability, wages, food prices, and resource management. But this new moon is not just about policy, it's about values. Taurus asks, what is truly sustainable? And for many Canadians, this may be a moment of reassessment. What do they expect from leadership? What defines stability now? What is no longer acceptable? This is where the political layer deepens. This new moon could mark a shift in public mindset, not necessarily immediate political change, but a clearer internal decision among Canadians about what they want moving forward, a redefining of priorities. And in Taurus, once a decision is made, it tends to stick. Emotionally, this may feel grounding but heavy. There is a desire for stability, but also a recognition of what it will take to get there. Now we move to May 17th, where everything accelerates. Mercury enters Gemini, its home sign, activating Canada's house of communication, media, and national conversation. And immediately, Mercury forms a conjunction with Uranus. This is the most volatile and fast-moving energy of the week. Uranus represents disruption, surprises, and awakening. When Mercury meets Uranus, information moves quickly and often unexpectedly. This could manifest as breaking political news, sudden announcements, policy shifts, or moments that rapidly shift public attention. It can also look like spikes in online discourse, viral political conversations, or strong public reactions that spread quickly across media platforms. If there's already been frustration building toward leadership, and there has, this transit acts like a spark. It doesn't create the tension, it reveals it, and it amplifies it. Voices that feel unheard can become louder. Narratives can change direction quickly, and Canadians may feel like things are happening faster than they can process. There is also a technological layer here. There can be developments in digital platforms, communication systems, or policy related to media and information flow. But the key theme is acceleration. This is where conversations intensify. When we look at how this is likely to play out across Canada, it aligns very closely with what is already unfolding. Concerns around affordability, housing, and economic pressure are ongoing, and this week brings those issues into sharper focus. At the same time, conversations around leadership and accountability are becoming more visible. Across different provinces, this may show up in different ways. Resource-based economies may focus more on energy and economic policy. Urban centers may feel this more through housing and cost of living pressure. But nationally, the threat is the same. Canadians are evaluating stability and asking who is responsible for creating it. Astrology doesn't dictate political outcomes, but it does reflect timing. And right away, the timing suggests that public voices are becoming louder, clearer, and harder to ignore. This week calls for grounded awareness and thoughtful engagement. Pay attention to financial information and announcements around the middle of the week. Use the new moon to reassess your own sense of stability, where you feel secure and where adjustments may be needed. And as we move into the weekend, be mindful of how quickly information is moving. Not every headline needs a reaction. Not every conversation needs escalation. Stay informed, but stay centered. Focus on what is consistent, practical, and aligned with long-term stability. This is about responding with clarity, not reacting to noise. To summarize, this is a defining week. Clarity emerges around Canada's economic reality. A new financial cycle begins, and then communication accelerates rapidly, bringing public sentiment to the surface. This may not be a week where everything changes, but it is a week where it becomes very clear what Canadians are no longer willing to accept. And that clarity matters because it shapes what comes next. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next forecast.